Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, welcome, and if you're a subscriber already, thank you so much. So in today's video, I want to talk about performance anxiety, and I've got 10 tips that will hopefully help you if you're a musician that feels a little bit scared on stage. So I'm sure many of you know the feeling. You're just very afraid to go on stage, to just be yourself. You know, it's just not happening. So maybe if you're a singer, your voice feels really tense, or maybe you forget your words, maybe your hands start to sweat, you start to shake, and you make really stupid mistakes, or what feels to you like stupid mistakes, and it's just overall like a really horrible experience. And trust me, I've been there. So a few years ago, I played a gig in a pub. This was kind of before Naoki and before the projects I'm doing now. And I was singing a song I had written. It was quite an ambitious song and had some kind of hard high notes in it. And I sang it, and all of a sudden my voice just like closed up. I have no idea. I still don't know what like actually physiologically happened. But like the only way I can describe it was kind of like a reverse yawn. Like it felt like something was folding in on itself, and there was no sound that was coming out. Like it was scary. I could not produce a sound with my voice at all. It just wasn't happening. So believe me when I say I've experienced anxiety. I know what it's like. I can relate. But luckily I have done a lot of research, and nowadays I'm able to step on the stage and perform and have fun. And I came up with 10 tips that I want to share with you in today's video. Just a quick disclaimer, I'm not a trained psychologist. I'm a musician. I work with performance, technology, electronic instruments. I'm not kind of like a brain specialist. So everything I'm going to tell you today is from my own experience and from things I've read, but I think that it's still hopefully going to be useful to many of you. So without further ado, the first tip. So my first tip is assess your situation. I think it's very important to say that if you have underlying mental health issues, you need to address those first. So I'm sure that the tips in this video might still help some people that do have mental health issues. But like I said, I'm not a trained psychologist. And so if there's kind of things going on in the background that go beyond just, stage fright, then it's really important that you address those first. So go see a doctor, see a therapist if you're worried that there's something more going on. Next tip, second tip, is practice. And this might seem really obvious to some of you. You might be like, yeah, well, duh, of course I need to practice before I go on stage. But you'd be really surprised just how much you need to practice in order to feel confident on stage. Because as soon as those nerves kick in, you get tunnel vision, you're no longer able to sort of like think broadly and creatively in the way that you may be able to at home. And at that point, the muscle memory just has to kick in. So when you think you've practiced enough, practice a bit more and just make sure you really know your material. One of my favorite books is by the Hungarian psychologist Csikszentmihalyi, and the book is called Flow, and it's about a special state of mind where you're kind of in the zone. I find it super fascinating. So flow is basically a state of being where you forget everything that's happening around you. You're completely focused on a task, and you're totally into it, basically. And I think that's the ideal place to be when you're performing live. No, there's lots and lots of parameters that lead to flow. It's not an easily explained concept. There's lots to it. But one thing that's important is that the difficulty level has to match your skill level. So what that means, that when you're playing something on stage or you're singing something on stage that's just a little bit too hard for you, then you're going to screw up. But interestingly, if it's too easy, you also can't get into a flow state. So the important thing is it has to sit on that sort of like a special kind of perfect point of skill versus, difficulty where you can get into the zone. And that's something you achieve by practicing, by exploring different pieces, by experimenting with different difficulty levels and so on. And one more thing, if I talk about practice as electronic musicians, I mean, this channel is kind of mainly for electronic musicians, but this applies to everyone. When I'm talking about practice, of course you have to practice your own instrument, you have to practice singing well, you have to practice playing certain difficult passages, you know, maybe if you're a pianist, you might have to play your scales, you know, whatever. But practice goes a little bit further than that. You can also practice your presence on stage. You can practice how you use your hands, the kind of things you might say between the songs that you're singing. And if you're an electronic musician, you know, you need to test your setup. You make sure it all works, that everything, you know, nothing kind of suddenly there's no sound coming out, you know, you're plugging everything in, but there's no sound, you know, what do you do now? So it's about checking and testing again and again all of the equipment you're going to use. Make sure your microphone works, make sure your cable doesn't crackle, your laptop isn't going to suddenly turn itself off in the middle of your song, you know, whatever your setup might be, test it as much as you possibly can. It also makes sense to practice with the scenario in mind, you know, with the performance scenario in mind. So what I used to do as a singer is I used to find it harder to sing when my voice felt very disconnected from my body. So I'm singing, but my voice is coming out of a speaker somewhere else, you know, that's something you have to get used to. And so at the beginning, I would practice a lot with headphones. So I would route my voice into some recording software. I would put a loud backing track on, and I would test what it would be like if I pan my voice to the side, or if I put it further back, if I make it too quiet or too loud, and just get used to sort of like the performance situation. So think about exactly what it is you're going to do on stage and practice exactly that. So my third tip is take some time to prepare. And I've already talked about practice, but preparation goes beyond practice. So other things you might want to prepare is, you know, how to get yourself in the mindset to perform. Put on some nice clothes maybe. I always find that when you look cool, you're going to feel more cool. You know, you're going to feel a bit more confident in yourself. Just sort of prepare yourself for the situation, you know, maybe go into the venue first, check it out if you get a chance, you know. Also very, very important, always do a sound check. You know, obviously depends on what kind of musician you are, but 99% of the time you kind of want to make sure you do a sound check. You're happy with your own sound, you're happy with also what kind of sound comes back to you. So basically, you know, you're going to have monitor speakers on stage, or maybe you have monitor headphones, you know, in-ears, or some other kind of reference system. But you need to make sure you can hear yourself properly and your levels all make sense, both from your perspective and also from the perspective of the audience. So preparation is really important. Tip number 4. So now let's say you're actually on stage, you're jamming out, you're playing your song, you're singing your song, you know, whatever, and you're starting to feel kind of the nerves creep in. So this is where you have to sort of be in control of your attention. The best thing to try and do is to shift your focus away from yourself. Like, don't think about, oh, you know, what if I screw up? What do I look like? What if I play the wrong note? But instead shift your focus towards the piece that you're playing. And I know that's a little bit difficult. One thing that can help you do that is, of course, practice, which we've already been sort of talking about. Also meditation, which I'll talk about later. But essentially, if you try to think about something other than yourself when you're on stage, that's going to really help you a lot. So think about the emotion of the piece, maybe visualize what the piece would look like as a music video, you know. Maybe you are sort of a mythical creature in a beautiful forest, or maybe there's some animals, or maybe you're racing a car on a motorway. Just think about what is the essence of the song, what is the emotion, what is it that you're trying to project out, and stop thinking about, oh, my hair's kind of too flat, or what if I sing the wrong note, because that's just not going to work, basically. Number 5, try and make friends with the audience. So I'm sure you have experienced different scenarios if you've performed live before, where you've played to an audience and You can get people that are just not interested. There's people that are just talking to each other, not even looking at you. I don't know, maybe someone's looking really angry. Try not to think about it too much. I've got a couple of very, very good friends that just have got a really crazy resting bitch face. They look like they hate it, but actually they love it. I've had other audiences that absolutely loved what I was doing, but they were just really introverts, or they were standing kind of really, really still, even though my music's quite high impact. So the best thing to do is kind of look around the audience and pick out a few people that look friendly, you know, that look really, really nice, and that look like they're connecting with what you're doing, and just perform to those people. Try and ignore everyone else. And if you're finding that difficult as well, it can help to sort of find a point in the distance. I've done it before where I've kind of gone, oh, there's a door frame in the back there. That door frame's called Bob, and he's my friend, and I'm going to perform to this door frame. You know, like, there's all these little tricks that you can use in order to make friends with your audience, you know, in your mind, in your heart, and to kind of feel more comfortable on stage. The worst thing you can do is look at your audience and go, oh God, this guy here in the front row, he really hates it. Oh no, what's he doing? Oh no, he's talking to someone. What's he talking about? Is he talking about me? Like, try to cut all of that out and just try and focus on those people that are enjoying what you're doing. So number 6 is develop a performance persona. I've already touched on this in a few other points, but part of practicing, we've been over practicing quite a lot in this video already, but part of what you're doing when you're practicing is that you're practicing actually the act of performing. You know, it's all about body language. It's about what you say between songs. You know, who do you make eye contact with? How do you use your hands? Do you dance around? Do you stand still? Who are you when you are performing on stage? And that's your performance persona, basically. And developing a performance persona is not just useful in the context of overcoming stage fright. It's also something that's going to really help you as a musician in general. If you look at different marketing books, Seth Godin is one of my favorite writers in the area of marketing. And he says you have to be remarkable. You know, no one's going to buy... He's got this, basically, he did this talk about purple cows, So if you went into a field or you went for a walk in the countryside and there's some cows, you're not going to go, oh my God, guys, look, there's a cow. On the other hand, if there was a purple cow, you might have that reaction. So because the purple cow is remarkable. And the point of all of this that I'm saying is that think about how you can turn yourself into some form of interesting persona. And I'm not saying be fake or put on a show and, you know, put on a mask, be someone that you're not in real life. I think it's more about finding a part of yourself and exaggerating that. And once you find that part of yourself and you're using it on stage, you will automatically become more comfortable because you've kind of got this behavioral schema that you can step into whilst you're on stage. So you've got essentially like a pattern of behaviors that you can fall back on. My partner always says, you know, he sees himself as this old man, like prophet guy, you know, even though he's not old. I've known other people that identify as specific animals. You know, maybe you are a princess, you know, I don't know, whatever it is, whatever you feel you can connect with, you become that thing on stage, basically. And again, it's to do with practicing. You have to practice performing to people. I think the hardest thing to do is to perform to just 3 people or just a very small group of people. It's actually much more difficult than playing to a huge group of people. Just because you feel put on the spot, you can see every single person. It's not like this big sea of people where everyone sort of gets lost in it a bit. So a good way to practice is to deliberately put yourself in uncomfortable performance situations. Maybe initially with your friends and family, but then also with other people, and just get used to that feeling of slight discomfort and learn to build up the performance persona and make it strong and make it be resilient to those different situations. Number 7, try not to take yourself too seriously. Make sure to be able to laugh at your mistakes. I've done it many times where I've just, I've played my song and suddenly the audio has stopped, or I've pressed the wrong button and I've made a really big blunder. But hey, we're all humans, we all do it, it's completely normal. And I think if you're not taking risks on stage, if you're not trying things that are a little bit difficult, then no magic can happen. For the magic to happen, you need to take risks. But when you're taking risks, of course, sometimes things are going to go wrong. So I played in this small little basement bar in Paris once, and it was one of the funnest gigs I've ever played. But in my Ableton track, there was like a stem that was suddenly missing, like it just wasn't playing back. And it was my song Serendipity, and basically I had the drums, I had the bass line, but nothing else. So there was nothing else in the song. It was completely stripped back, and I was like, oh my God, like, what do I do? It was really scary. But then I was like, do you know what? I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to jam with this. I'm going to see what happens. I'm just going to experiment. And I think that's the best attitude you can have. And sometimes, like I said, that's where the real magic happens. And so I think it's important to be open-minded to this kind of thing. Number 8, the next thing that's really important is feedback. And I know I always go on about practicing, but the more you practice performing to different audiences, the more you're going to get a feeling for how you're perceived. And I think feedback is super important as a musician. It's also something that you kind of have to learn how to deal with. And what I mean by that is a lot of feedback that we get is very emotional, very subjective. Sometimes people give you feedback based on their own taste or based on things that they've seen. But at the end of the day, you can't be a musician without feedback, because you have no idea how you're perceived by other people. You just won't know unless you ask them. And some feedback will be negative, some feedback will be positive, some feedback will be feedback that's really useful, sometimes it's just opinionated and not very useful. But I think any feedback should be welcome, and you should reflect on any feedback that you get and say, okay, here are some things, this person perceives me like this, but actually I want to be perceived like this. So what can I do? What can I swap around to be a little bit more true to my own vision? I think that's the best way to think about it. So perform as much as you can, go out, play in an open mic night, play to some friends, whatever, just ask them what they think. And just, have an open mind as to the feedback that you're going to get. So the next point I want to talk about is a healthy lifestyle. Depending on what instrument you're playing or whether you're a singer, there's specific things that you need to look out for. As singers, for example, we need to make sure we don't get acid reflux. Also, too much caffeine can really dry out your voice, can also make you feel really, really nervous. Having too much sugar can make you feel nervous. So just generally doing a lot of exercise, just being on top of your health, getting enough sleep can really do wonders for your performance anxiety. And now again, this is a bit of a cliche, but it really is true. If you're healthy and you're doing well, you're feeling good in yourself, you are going to feel stronger and you're going to feel more resilient on stage as well. So I was just talking about health, and one thing I just want to add on top is meditation. I think meditation is just a really great way to boost your mental health and to just feel a lot more focused, feel happier, have less annoying thoughts going on in your head. So I would recommend meditation to almost everyone. One of my favourite resources is Professor Mark Williams' book about mindfulness meditation. He's done a lot of research about the connection between meditation and mental health. And there's also a YouTube playlist of beginner guided meditations, which I really love, that I used to follow at the beginning, and I will link it down below in the description. But the better you are at controlling your focus and focusing on, directing your attention towards one specific thing, the better you're also going to be at performing live and not worrying about the audience, but instead worrying about or thinking about the song. So it's a really, really good weapon, a really good tool in your toolkit, and I can't recommend it highly enough. So now I come to the last point of this video, and I think it's really important, and that is to embrace failure. So one of my favourite quotes by Ernest Hemingway is, "The first draft of everything is shit." And I think that's really true, and it applies, you know, obviously he's a writer, so it's about kind of written drafts, but the same applies to anything and everything that we do. I think, you know, in order to create something amazing, you have to create lots and lots of stuff, and then eventually something amazing will come out of this. What I mean by that is you have to embrace failure, you have to make failure, as a creative, you have to make failure a natural part of your life. Another book that I love is, I'm going to put all these books down below, so don't worry, but another one that I really like is called Art and Fear. And one thing discussed in this book is an interesting situation where I think it was a ceramics course where, you know, imagine this experiment, you're teaching a ceramics course, and half the students were given the task to create as much stuff as they possibly could. So they were just only marked on like the weight of the overall stuff that they made at the end. Whereas the other half of the class was asked to create like the perfect piece. And guess what? The half that was just supposed to make as much as possible ended up with the better products. And what we can learn from this is that the more you try, the more you do, the more you perform, the better you're going to get. And don't worry so much about being perfect every single time. Don't be so hard on yourself, you know. I think the best way to look at performances is as experiences, to look at what can I take away from this, what can I make a tiny bit better next time. Don't perform in order to prove yourself to people, but perform in order to move forward, you know, with your vision, with your career, with your life, and whatever. So yeah, those were my 10 tips. I hope you found them useful. This was a bit of a longer video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you got another tip that I haven't mentioned, please do put it down below in the comments. I would love to read it. I'm always really interested in people's opinions. And also, if you want to see more videos like this, or performance videos, videos about how to perform with technology, and some covers, you know, that's the kind of stuff I do on this channel. So please consider subscribing, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, and bye!